my mouse pose on. So first things first with Illustrator, if you haven't messed with any of the Adobe programs, there's a little bit of an anatomy that we've got to go through. Across the top, we have something called the application bar. And then right underneath it, this is the option bar. There's not much in there right now. When we get into a document, we'll be messing with that, but this constantly changes depending on what elements we're looking at. Over here's our toolbar. We'll be using a lot of these different tools as we zoom in throughout this project. And then these are our panels. So that's just the basic anatomy. As I go through and start to tell you where you need to go, that's what's going on. We're going to start a new file. If you remember, I've got in the project here some directions. So we'll launch this, just have this open in the background. So we need to basically create two files here. One file is your last name underscore typology, and your other file is the actual balance project. So for the last name typology, this can be just a simple 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. So let's switch back to Illustrator. I'm going to hit Command and Tab inside the Mac. That'll switch us back to the other application. We're going to go up here to File and New. If I can hit it. Oh, it's thinking. All right. So this first little dialog box gives us the ability to name it, and we already know based on our directions what we need to name it. So last name underscore typology. The reason I put that underscore in there is it just keeps everything on the same line, and it's good practice as you start, if you ever start getting into coding. When you do HTML, you want things without spaces so that it works better. And then we see down here, this is the number of artboards. In the other project, we need to add some more. For this one, we don't, so I'm going to leave that alone. And we have a bunch of different size options, and then we can customize it right here with the height and width. Just keep it at letter. One of the things that's really important for future reference is where it says units. If this says points and you have 8 points by 11 points, that is going to screw the pooch when it comes to designing stuff. And sometimes it'll show up as points first. So this is really the first place you should look. In this instance here for orientation, we can have it either horizontal or vertical. Doesn't really matter. And in this case, we don't need a bleed either. Some of you don't see any of this advanced information. This little button right here gives us the ability to see the color mode, the screen size. In this case, this is information that's a bit extraneous to what we're covering today, but we don't necessarily need to mess with color mode. It's set to RGB and it's set to screen as well. This gives us the ability to have screen-rich effects, not printed-rich effects. We're not even going to mess with effects in Illustrator, so this is not necessary information. But good to know in the future. So I've got my document set up. This is going to be my artboard, this black and white shape right here, and then this is my canvas. The first thing that I want to do is go through some of the very basics of creating shapes and then selecting those shapes and moving around. So I'm going to quickly just take you through two different types of tools, which are the line tool and the rectangle tool. I'm not going to show you everything, just to show you a couple of the things in here. And then I'm also going to show you the black arrow and the white arrow. I call them the black arrow and the white arrow instead of direct selection and regular selection just because it's simpler. There's less syllables and it's easier to remember black and white than it is selection and direct selection. The other tool that I'm going to end up showing you is the pen tool. And we're going to try to get through most of this stuff today so that you're ready to go on the next class when we get into the computer lab on next Thursday. So let's go ahead and back out. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click and hold on this tool that says line segment. Now what I see here is a bunch of different tools, but then there's this little tear off thing right here. If I click on this, it'll make what's called a flotilla, and it'll allow me to have this tool right next to the design as I'm working on stuff. And so I see all of these different tools. I'm going to go through just a couple of them with you. First things first, with the line segment, I can see that if I click on each one of these, they'll stay a little darker. That's the tool that I'm actually using. If I click and hold, you'll notice that on my computer, every time I click, I get a red dot. That lets you know that I'm currently pressing and holding on my computer. When I let go, when I come up here, that red dot goes away. And that, incidentally, is how you make a line segment inside Illustrator. It's very, very simple. You simply click, hold your click, move your line wherever you want it to go, and when you let go, that line is formed. Now, Illustrator is a program that's based on vectors, which is mathematical formula. All of that math is scalable, and that's where Illustrator becomes a very beneficial design program, because you can scale something down so that it'll fit nicely on a business card and on a billboard, and you never lose quality between those two different scales. When you're dealing with Photoshop, you're dealing with pixels, and so you can lose quality as you expand and contract things. I'm going to go ahead and select all. So I come up here to select and all. In the future, I'm going to hit Command and A. And that selects everything on my artboard. And then I'm going to hit the delete button up in the upper right-hand corner of my keyboard to delete everything out. I'll be doing that frequently to clear off my stage. So I want to introduce to you the modifiers. Illustrator is a program that requires two hands. And inside the Mac and inside the PC, the modifiers are really similar. The first modifier is the command button, and it looks like a little knot. On the PC, this is the control button, so CTRL. So anytime you see this little knot at the bottom of my screen, then you know that I'm dealing with I'm pressing and holding the command button. The next modifier is the option button. It looks kind of like an escalator. An escalator gives you two options, up or down. So that's how I can remember it. But essentially, the option button is going to be one we use quite a bit. This button on the PC is the Alt button, ALT. The next one is the Shift button, upward arrow, so like uppercase letters. That's how I remember this. The Shift button is the same between PC and Mac. And then we have the Control button. This looks like an upward-facing caret. There is no similar button inside the PC. This one we won't be using too often, but every now and then you'll see me press that one and it'll show up even if I do it inadvertently. So that's why you're seeing this caret. So it's not on the PC, you don't have to worry about it. So now that I've been playing with these lines, this is the first way to create it. I press and hold. Another way I can create a line is just to simply click once. What this will do is it'll give me the line segment tool options. Illustrator has the potential to be a very specific and precise program. So I can make a 5-inch line that is exactly 45 degrees. I hit Tab to be able to set those things. Notice how it's jumping back and forth. I'm just hitting Tab to go back and forth. And then I just hit OK, and it makes a 45-degree 5-inch line segment. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command A and delete. This time I'm going to make a line segment, but I'm going to add a modifier to it. So I'm going to press and hold, and then I'm going to add the modifier while I'm pressing and holding. And notice what happens. It forces the line to be either horizontal, diagonal at one of the 45s, or vertical. Now, if I let go of the Shift button, that kind of unconstrains it, so I can move it anywhere I want. But I've never let go. You notice how that little red dot has never left up. If I add it in the middle of a click, it'll start to cause it to be constrained again. Shift is always going to constrain. Notice what just happened there. I let go of my Shift button before I let go of the click, and so I lost the constraints. I'll do that one more time. Drag over, press and hold the Shift button. This time when I let go of my click first, then I let go of the Shift. That's important. So there's that. The Option button, I'm going to add that halfway through. What will happen here is I've got this midpoint right here, and right now it's anchored so that it's at an edge, one point to the next for the line. The second I add the option, that turns into a midpoint, and it essentially gives me the ability to create a line where whatever I do to one side, it's the same length is happening to the other side after the midpoint. So the Option button works as a emanate from center. I can put both of them on, so I can constrain it and have it emanate from the center. So that's that. The next modifier that I'm going to add to this is the spacebar. Now I'm still in the middle of my click, but you notice how it's hinged. I want this to be approximately the same length and approximately the same angle as this other one, this other mark here. Sure, there's other ways to do it, but I want to do it using my spacebar. So I'm going to press and hold the spacebar. When I do that, that unhinges my line. And so now I'm not anchored. I'm going to let go. I'm anchored again. When I press the spacebar, I'm unhinged. I'm just going to line these 2 points up. Let go of spacebar, get it so it's nice. Press spacebar again, pull it out. And now I was able, just using the shortcut spacebar, to modify that so I can move it around. Alright. That's pretty much good for the line tool. I'm going to skip the arc tool and go right to the spiral tool, just to show you a couple more modifiers. The spiral tool, if you remember the Fibonacci sequence lecture, this follows the Fibonacci sequence exactly. The new modifier for this is the arrows on your keyboard. Up arrow increases the amount of spiral twirls. Down arrow brings that back. And you can kind of unfurl it all the way so it just becomes a regular arc. But I'm going to go ahead and keep a little bit of a spiral here. I haven't used the command modifier yet, so I'm going to go ahead and press and hold command. And I want you to notice where the center of that spiral is and where the point of my spiral is. When I press and hold command and start to drag them together, it starts to force those two spirals together. If I go on the other side, I switch, and my inside spiral becomes my outside and vice versa. So that's what this does. It's a way to kind of unfurl physically the spiral. So that's what the command button's doing. The option button is allowing me to add and take away as I pull them closer together. So it's just like pressing the up and down arrows, whereas the command makes it come in. And then the shift button just constrains it. So it keeps this the exact number of spirals. It just changes the size. And I can kind of keep it wherever I want. The last kind of modifier that I want to show you is a neat one. It's called the tilde key, and it's underneath the escape button on the top left-hand side of your keyboard. If I press and hold it and drag across, what happens is the program duplicates the mark each and every single time I move. And so what's happening here, I can see that I had a pretty even movement, but my computer wasn't able to capture all these little individual parts here. And if you see up here, my computer is working really hard because of the screen capture that I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and hit Command A and delete, start back over. And I'm going to close this flotilla because I don't need it anymore. Are there any questions at this point about lines or the modifiers? We're starting really slow and really simple. I wish you had computers in front of you so that at this point you could start to play around. But I think what's best is just to kind of keep going. So I'm going to show you two different types of shapes. I'm going to make a rectangle, and this time I'm going to make the rectangle. I'm going to hit Command 0 to center this. Just by clicking, I'll make a 2-inch by 2-inch rectangle. Hit OK. Right now we see that up in the option bar, if you remember I said there's not much in it right now because I don't have any objects selected. Now I got something selected. That's what that blue path around it is. We can see all of the attributes of this box. Let's go ahead and look at what fill is all about. Fill is going to fill the area inside the vectors. So by choosing yellow or green or what have you, I can choose what the box looks like. The stroke is going to determine what the outside line looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this red stroke here. It's easy to see. I also have the ability to increase the stroke so you can see a little bit more. For our purposes, I think this is going to be great. I'm going to go ahead and switch to another object, press and hold on the rectangle tool, come down to the ellipse tool. This time I'm going to, instead of just clicking to make it, I'm going to press and hold the shift button and the option button. That means it's going to constrain it so all of the sides are the same, and it's going to make it so it emanates from the center. So I'm essentially making a circle. Now, because my fill and stroke attribute were the same, both objects are giving me a similar thing, or a similar look. So the fill and the stroke is the same look. What I want to do now is I want to be able to move these objects, but each time I click on them, I'm making a new circle, and that's not what I want to do. So I need to undo those last steps that I took by hitting Command Z or Edit Undo. And this time what I want to do is go to one of my move tools. So up here I have two different move tools. I have my black arrow or my white arrow. For now we're going to go to the black arrow. And you can see in parentheses right behind the tool there's a shortcut, V. All of the shortcuts are showing up right here. So if I hit V, I'm in the black move tool. Now I can kind of rearrange these and move them around where I want them to go. And my goal here is to bring both of these boxes right next to each other, and then I'm going to zoom in on them so I can show you these different things that they're made out of. So what I want to do now is zoom in. There's ways to zoom. I can zoom in and out with Command plus and Command minus, or this drop down. I think it's pretty fast to just hit Command plus to zoom in. As I click on these, you see that they both have different points on them. These points are part of a bounding box. What I can do is I can click and hold on these points and resize these objects using the black arrow tool. I'm going to undo both of those changes. Same thing up here. I can resize this and turn it more into an ellipse. Keep it a circle for now. Now the white arrow does something a little different. When I have the white arrow going, I don't get that bounding box. I can't resize it. But I do have access. I'm going to zoom in here. I do have access to these little points. As I mouse over the points, you see that my cursor gets a little box next to it. This box lets me know that I'm right on an anchor. And these anchors are what I want to talk about now. When I click on an anchor, what happens is all of the anchors turn white, but this anchor turns blue. I'm going to click on this one. Notice how these are all white and that one's blue. That allows me to actually click and then select and move that anchor around, effectively opening up these shapes so that I can do anything I want with them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to undo that, is show you the different types of anchors here. Command and space allows me to zoom in. That's a Mac only shortcut, so Command plus and minus works on PCs. Right here, when I click on this kind of anchor, I get these two little things. These are called handles. So this is the anchor, that's the handle. This anchor is a smooth anchor because the math that goes into it doesn't have any corners. It's smooth all the way through the angle. Whereas this anchor right here, when I click on it, I don't get any handles, and the math that goes into it is exact. So this is called a corner anchor. So the difference with a corner anchor and a smooth anchor is those handles. When I click on a handle, what happens is it wants to keep the math smooth. So whatever I do to one side, it has to do the opposite to the other side. So I can use this white selection tool, or the white arrow direct selection tool, to be able to move this. With the black arrow, I can't do any of that stuff. Oh, I lied. I didn't think I could. Because it was still open from the white arrow, I could, but typically I don't have access to that kind of thing. Hey, you learn something new every single time you're in the program. Alright, so now that these handles are here, you might be asking, how do I control just one handle? Well, you can do that by using the modifier option. If I press and hold the option button, that unhinges the handles so that what I do to one side doesn't affect the other side. And that allows you to get these kind of fiery teardrop type shapes if you wanted. You can also convert this into what's called a compound anchor. So one side has a straight angle coming into it, and the other side has a smooth vector coming out of it. So corner anchors have two straight paths coming into it. Smooth anchors have a continuous, smooth, curved path going through it, and a compound has straight on one side and a curve on the other. So that's the three different anchor types. What's up?
Before you said the spacebar unhinged no point, but now when you're working here with these two shapes, the option bar unhinged.
Good question. So What Eric is asking, I'm going to zoom in. He said that when I use the spacebar while I'm on one of these handles, I can unhinge the point. That's information that we haven't covered in this class, but in other classes I have. So right now, as I'm moving this handle around, the anchor stays put. The second I add the spacebar to it, now I can move my anchor wherever I want. I get it positioned where I want. When I let go of the spacebar, now I can move this handle around in a different location. So spacebar is the modifier to allow me to adjust or unhinge the anchor. Now, what I had just said was if I want to use the handles so that one side doesn't affect the other, I unhinge, which maybe is a bad choice of words on my part because I'm using it to describe something else. I kind of unlink this side from this side by pressing and holding the Option key. Is that maybe a better way to say it?
Yeah.
Very good. Good question. Any other questions about the anchor types or the white arrow or black arrow? Awesome. We're going to go on to the next step, which is the pen tool. I'm going to show you all the way over here what the pen tool does. If I press and hold the pen tool, I have another tearaway. I'm going to show you something that's a bit needless. Notice that the pen tool has these 4 other tools underneath it. When I click on an object, that pen tool has a little X next to it. That X means that I'm going to be starting a brand new path. Remember, Illustrator is all about paths. It's all about vectors. So if I click right here, that path that I originally had goes away, and I'm starting to draw a brand new path with a red stroke and a yellow fill. That's not necessarily what I wanted to do. I wanted to add to the path that was previously existing. So I'm going to hit Command Z. And now you'll notice as I move my cursor over this path, it changes to the second tool cursor that we see, that little plus. I'm going to go ahead and click, and that adds an anchor point. So if you remember, the white arrow allows us to select and move around anchor points. The pen tool actually generates anchor points. And you see here, now that these anchors are there on the path, if I mouse over them, I get the third tool on the list, which is the Remove Anchor tool. So I click on them and I can remove all 3 of these. What I want to do is basically, and I'll show you this one here in a second, I want to be able to edit this shape by adding some paths and being able to move around it. But the only way that I can grab this anchor is to use a modifier. Now I have to use the modifier control for this. But if I've got the black arrow as the last arrow that I had selected, that doesn't work because it only gives me access to be able to expand or contract or rotate this box. I need to make sure that I was in the white arrow first, then I go to the black arrow, or then I go to the pen tool. The shortcut for the white arrow is the A button. The shortcut for the pen tool is the P button. One of the things that I constantly do is train myself to always hit A before I hit P to make sure that I have access to my white arrow as I'm using the pen tool. So it's a quick little thing, but it helps. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that one anchor. Notice how all of the other anchors are white. Now I can go ahead and click and hold my command button and drag this anchor in, essentially modifying the shape. So the pen tool allows me to modify pre-existing shapes. Now here's where we're going to turn. In the next 9 minutes, I'm going to show you how to take your image that you downloaded from the internet and convert it into something that we can trace and have an opaque object. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command A and hit Delete so that everything goes away. And I'm going to come down here to Safari. And I'm going to do fire hydrants. Why not? This is for you, Janine. You're welcome. I'll email you this, okay? So I'll do this fire hydrant here. What I want to do, it doesn't really matter that it's a smaller image. I'm just going to grab it and drag it into my pre-existing document. That might not work. There it is. Cool. All right, so we've got this here. What I want to do is turn this into a template. So I'm going to come down here to my layer panel, first experience with panels, and I double click on that where it says layer 1, and that opens up my layer options. I'm just going to click template and then click OK. That dims that layer out so that I can't affect it anymore. I can just trace on it, or I can't trace on it. I have to make a brand new layer. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, so I just double click on the layer and I hit template, and then it turns this into a template. Down here at the bottom of the layer panel, I have create new layer. I want to create a new layer, and on top of it, I'm just going to start to trace. So I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to zoom in. It's a lot easier to zoom in and trace than it is to be zoomed out and trace. Right now, when I look at my attributes, I would be filling this with yellow and then have no stroke. Well, I need to be able to trace with some sort of line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this so that this says no fill on it. So by clicking on it, I get all these different colors. Go to the white box with the red slash, and then I click up here, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on, let's do green because it's the opposite of red. It's easy to see on top of one another. And then my stroke is still 1 point. That's pretty good. Now, a common mistake that people make when they start to trace is they'll just start to click and make a whole bunch of different shapes. If you do that on this project, I'm going to fail you on the project because this is not what I want to see you do. I think anybody can stipple and create this little shape around an object. What is more important to me is that you learn how to do Bezier curves. And so I'm going to hit Command A, delete everything that I just put down. This time what I'm going to do, I'm going to, in a fraction of the time after you learn how to do it, I'm going to start to create these different shapes. So I click once, and then I'm going to come to probably the apex of this curve. This time what I'm going to do, instead of just clicking, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. And notice what happens. I get this pathway here. Oh, this red doesn't work. Hold on real fast. I'm going to just change the color. Red on red, it's hard to see. I'll go back to light blue. Alright, so I start to create a pathway. I think I need to zoom in. Son of a gun. I'm going to show you, I promise. I start to create this path, but as I click and drag, I'm instantly making these handles. And it doesn't really matter where the front of this handle goes. What matters is what this pathway is doing. Does this look like it's going to follow the shape? Negative. What incidentally, and it's just kind of weird, follows the shape is if my front handle continues to follow the contour of the actual shape. And when I let go, I've got the first start of my path, 1 point to the next. Now some people think that you might need to put it on the next handle. You don't. You can put it anywhere you want. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and it already gives me a good pathway to go from. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of watch this. This is fine. This is perfect. I don't need to do too much more to it. So we're good. Now I'm going to turn this shape just by clicking. Here's another kind of angle. So I'm going to click and drag this time. Click up here. Now this doesn't seem to work. So I've got to undo that last step. So I'm going to hit Command Z. This time, what's happening is I needed to pull this handle out to be able to get this curve. But this front handle, that's screwing me up. So what I need to do is I need to come back here and click just once on this. And what that's going to do is it's going to get rid of that front-facing handle, essentially converting it into a compound anchor, which we talked about before. Click on these. And these, since there's no angle, it doesn't take too much to be able to do that. That was wonky. Come straight down here. This time, I'm going to click on that again so I can come straight down. And I'm going to finish off right here with this. I'm just going to do the top part of the hydrant. I'm going to hit the spacebar so I can kind of unhinge that. Click it. Come down here. I am aware that I'm making this look pretty easy. I want you to not be terribly frustrated when you get to this for the first time and be like, what in the hell is going on? I do not understand why this is not working the way I had intended it to, especially if you've never messed with this program before. It takes a little while to get used to. Be patient. I've made this video for you so you can come back to it and check it out. If the object that you chose is too hard for your typology, go ahead and choose something else. Like I said, it doesn't take forever to find a new object and delve the internet for it. This is screwed up. I'm going to zoom in here. There we are. So when you get to the end of your object, you'll get a little circle. Oops. I haven't quite gotten there yet. Sorry about that. You'll get a little circle right next to your cursor, which will show you that you're closing the shape. Oops. Once I've closed the shape, now I can go ahead and start setting attributes for that shape. I'll zoom back out. And so I want it to be filled with green this time. So there you go. That's the basics of the Illustrator in terms of going through and using the line segment tool and the modifiers as a way of introducing the modifiers, the shape tool, the fill, the stroke. We also have the ability to select and change the size with the black arrow, or to select the anchors and change the way that shape fundamentally works with the white arrow. The pen tool allows us to actually go in and make brand new anchors or modify pre-existing anchors. So the only other tool that I haven't showed you in the last 30 seconds here I want to show you, I'm going to zoom in by pressing Command and Space, press and hold, and then let's say that I want to take this angle right here and make it straight, because when I made this initially, I didn't notice that I wasn't following the right contours. So I'm going to use my pen tool, but I'm going to press the modifier Option. And as I zoom in here, I see this little kind of half angle. What this is a convert anchor tool, and anything that has a smooth anchor to it, when I press on it, instantly converts it to a corner anchor. So now I can go ahead with these different corner anchors and set this so that it looks a little bit better. The problem is I need to be able to have a curve on one side. So there we are. Just fix that up. And that's that. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording.